What's good, everyone? It's your boy Isaiah Bella coming at you with a little bit of a different type of video today than I would usually post. Different from my usual content. This one's just going to stay on YouTube. It's not going to go on the podcast or anything. Want to take a moment to just talk about the Justin Fields trade, which went down about a week ago or less. Justin Fields was traded to the Pittsburgh Steelers for a 6th round pick in 2025 that could turn into a 4th round pick if he plays 51% of his games next season. Presumably, he'll play under Russell Wilson. I personally don't think that'll last very long, but this gives him a chance to sit under Mike Tomlin and just develop over time. This is not a video that I want to make, truth be told, because I love Justin Fields. Everyone who knows me knows that I love Justin Fields, but I mean, this is something that had to happen. The writing was on the wall. It was either Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus fully committed to a guy they did not draft, or they put their stamp on their Chicago Bears legacy and draft their own guy, which this quarterback draft is a very legitimate chance that if you came into an organization with somebody else's quarterback, you could definitely rebound and take that jump now. Naturally, as Bears fans do, every single time something major happens, we overreact. And just based on my videos alone, I'm obviously not a whole lot of people know who I am, but just based on my content alone, how many comments I've gotten of people saying, how could the Chicago Bears do something like this? How could they screw over Justin Fields like this? This move makes no sense. They could have traded the number 1 pick and gotten all these boatloads of other picks and gotten Marvin Harrison and blah, 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 blah. I really hate to be the one to say this because the past few seasons, I have been a diehard Justin Fields supporter. I still support Justin Fields. But unfortunately, in this situation, they made the right move. And on top of that, Ryan Poles said he was going to do right by Justin Fields, and he did exactly that. He put him with the team that Justin Fields wanted to be with. He put him with an organization that is known for winning. Even with lesser talent at certain times, they still win. Mike Tomlin has not had a losing season in his career. And with 2 quarterbacks that are very capable of winning, he could keep that going. Fields has a chance to settle down, relearn the basics, and at some point he can regain a starting position regardless of who that's going to be with. The part that people get confused here is how exactly did the Chicago Bears do Justin wrong? I do strongly believe that the Bears failed Justin Fields, just like a lot of other people do, but not in the same way that most people think, and I'll explain why. The question you have to ask is, if the Bears were going to go through 3 straight seasons of just tearing down and building up, and no quarterback could ever survive in those kinds of conditions, why trade up to get one, especially one as dynamic as Justin? The answer? Because of Nagy and Pace. After the 2020 season, the Chicago Bears were about to oversee some really big changes. They lost to the aging Saints in the wildcard round. Mitchell Trubisky had played his final snap as a Chicago Bear, so he was going into free agency for the first time. And somehow, some way, Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace earned one more chance to keep their jobs. The only way to do so was if they drafted a quarterback. Now, the 2021 season was also a really interesting year to draft a quarterback. It was pretty evident from the jump that the Chicago Bears really loved Justin Fields, and they were going to try to find a way to get him. Although they had the 20th pick in the draft, so it was more likely that they were going to end up with Zach Wilson or Mac Jones or something like that. Pretty much everyone remembers this, but things changed really dramatically leading up to the draft. Scouts fell in love with Zach Wilson after the pro day. John Lynch, for some reason, stood tall for Trey Lance, and every quarterback-needy team between picks 3 and 11 passed on Justin Fields for other needs. The Miami Dolphins took Jalen Waddle. The Broncos instead traded for Russell Wilson, and among other moves. Once Justin Fields fell to 11, that was the Bears' opportunity to trade up and grab him. If Nagy and Pace were looking to make a splash move at quarterback to save their jobs and give the city of Chicago someone that they could actually build upon, well, this was the one to do it, and they took the risk. The problem was the Bears had way too many question marks across the entire team and such uncertainty going into the following season that it just seemed like such bad timing. The roster they had that season was almost as bad as the staff. And then you had the pressure of the front office getting ready to show Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace the door. So if Justin Fields were to find an opportunity to start at any point in the season, he would be thrown into the fire, literally. And sure enough, week 3 rolled around. Andy Dalton and Nick Foles were both injured, and Justin Fields had to be forced into the starting role. I can't stress this enough. That game was bad. I'm not even going to bother showing the highlights of that game because there's no highlights. There's all lowlights. Justin Fields was sacked 7 times. 7 times. 5-man protection against one of the best defenses in the NFL at that time at the Cleveland Browns. Like, that game makes me angry. The offensive line had too many problems. Pretty much everyone knew that after the season was over, that was going to need a complete revamp. I will say, though, probably the worst part of that season was the coaching display, if you even want to call it that. It was malpractice across the board. I will never forget the constant going back and forth and fighting between Matt Nagy and Bill Lazor of who was going to call plays. One week Bill Lazor was going to call plays. One week Matt Nagy would take it back, and then all of a sudden the McCaskies would step in and say, "No, you can't call plays. You can't call plays this week. Oh, never mind. I trust you again." And just it never ended. It never ended. Nobody on that staff knew how to call an offense. And Justin is just in there like, well, what do I do? All in all, it was a terrible rookie season. Just awful. You did see some flashes of what Justin was able to do, especially with his legs, against teams like the Steelers and the 49ers. But none of it was enough. It was obvious that he should have just sat the entire season, and we could just roll into the new year with a new coaching staff and start over. The next season is where Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus step in, and, well, start over is the word for it. I'll start with the one certainty that they had. Justin Fields was, for sure, without a doubt, the starter of the football team. There was no question. There was no veteran that was going to step in and challenge him for the spot. This was Justin's team. He was taking over from there. Unfortunately for him, he would not have a team to take command of. You see, Ryan Poles came from the Kansas City Chiefs. He knows what a restructure looks like in terms of what he needs to replace and how he needs to replace. Basically, he came to Chicago and said, hey, everything, literally everything you were doing before, it's not working. Let's get rid of it. So he tore down the entire roster. Allen Robinson, gone. Anthony Miller, gone. Jamon Ifedi, can't stand him, gone. Whole offensive line, gone. Defense, replaced. Robert Quinn, traded. Khalil Mack, traded. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. It was much needed. I mean, these guys were super old. They were not staying on the field. Most of them were not productive at all. Most importantly, they cost way too much, and you can't build a team with no cap space and no draft picks. With that being said, the 2022 Chicago Bears fielded one of the worst teams I've ever seen outside of the quarterback. It was pitiful. I'm actually not even sure how they garnered 3 wins. They had the worst receiver room in the league. Their top 2 receivers were Equanimeous St. Brown and Velus Jones. By far, the worst offensive line in the league, and a defense that was also bottom 10 statistically. You would have thought that with all those things taken into consideration, this would be a 0-win team. The only person who really kept that from happening was Fields, and there were a few games where he was actually spectacular, even in the losses. Justin Fields had several games with 2 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns and 0 interceptions. He posted career highs in passing yards, rushing yards, touchdowns, completion percentage, QBR, and passer rating. He almost single-handedly turned the rushing attack into one of the best in the league. And that's not hyperbole either. I mean, against the Dolphins, he broke the regular season record for most rushing yards in a game, previously held by Michael Vick, and they put his cleats into the Hall of Fame, which was incredible. That was such a great game to watch. And with all that, with Justin Fields putting points on the board, even in the losses, the Bears end up with the #1 overall pick. A little bit of help from Lovie Smith. We salute you. That season, they had the choice between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. At the end of the evaluation, Ryan Poles decided that he was going to stick with Justin Fields. He was going to give him one more year. He was going to try and get him a weapon somehow, some way, and just kind of see what he actually has in his quarterback. And so they traded the #1 pick all the way back to #9 with the Carolina Panthers. I'm just going to say it now. They fleeced him. Okay, Ryan Poles robbed the Carolina Panthers blind. I mean, have you seen that team this year? They could use a first-round pick. Instead, we got it. Anyway, in that trade, they gained DJ Moore, one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. I don't care where you place DJ Moore. I don't care if you think he's top 10. I don't care if you think he's top 15. He's in that range, which makes him one of the best. There's a lot of receivers in the league, okay? That gave Justin Fields a true #1 receiver. Finally, we don't have to rely on guys like Dante Pettis and Nasimba Webster to save our season. And so the 2023 season began. It did not start off very hot. I think they lost the first, what was it? 5-6 games of the season. It might have been less than that. The point is, they looked really bad. And really the main culprit of this season was offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. Keep in mind, the Bears grabbed Luke Getsy from the Green Bay Packers. They were prepared to make him their official offensive coordinator, even though he had never called an offense before. Somehow the Bears pried him away. A lot of people saw that as a win, including me at first. Not really going to go in depth on his performance, but the main problem was his unwillingness to play to Justin Fields' strength. Fields still managed career highs in several passing categories, but it was not nearly enough for improvement. He still had problems going through his reads. He was antsy in the pocket. He's never been known for playing within structure, which is something that they really tried to emphasize this season, and it just didn't work. He was among top in the league in terms of the longest time to throw. And really the main thing that sticks out is even when he has clean pockets, he manages to get into harm's way even with an improved offensive line. It wasn't the best offensive line in the world, but it certainly was not the 2021 unit. There were still a lot of moments where Justin Fields was able to work some of his old magic from the 2022 season. And they did muster up 4 extra wins from the previous year. Granted, pretty much all of those wins were against really bad teams, excluding the Lions. You know, the Lions were our one win against a playoff team. But still, the previous season, we would not have even beaten the bad teams. They were that bad. And so the season ends against the Green Bay Packers, and it ends in such a way that really encapsulates the rest of the season, which is disappointment. Defense unmotivated, offense uninspired and lazy, and Justin Fields just seemed like his rookie self again, which is not the indicator they were looking for. Now, this offseason that we're currently in now, this is where things get really interesting because the Bears have a great opportunity to make some major moves this year. Because of the Panthers trade, they ended up with the #1 overall pick again. 2 years in a row, you have an opportunity to either trade the pick again or draft a quarterback. There are very few teams in NFL history, I certainly can't name you any of them, who have had this type of opportunity multiple times in a row. Let me tell you, they started off this offseason hot. Luke Getsy, gone, replaced with Shane Waldron, who was part of Pete Carroll's staff, but since Pete Carroll left the Seahawks, Shane Waldron was just kind of up for grabs. And the Bears placed the highest bid. To say that he is an upgrade is a complete understatement. I'll just say that. They replaced Eddie Jackson with Kevin Byard, which for a lot of reasons is a much better option, especially if you're looking to grow a very young secondary. They also did something that they failed to do the previous season. Offensive line depth. Lots and lots and lots of depth. Are they all starters? Probably not. But man, if I have to see Lucas Patrick rolled out in center one more time, I'm going to lose my mind. They did pull off one shocking trade, which this is the ultimate indicator of which direction the Bears were going to go. They managed to trade for Keenan Allen from the Chargers for a 4th round pick who just came off his best season of his career. Keenan Allen with DJ Moore And Cole Kmet, man, I don't care who's throwing the ball. They are the types of receivers who make it easy for anybody. Which begs the ultimate question. Who do they expect to throw them the ball? What makes this so difficult is Caleb Williams is sitting right there. He's not a guy who you can just pass on. And if they truly trusted Justin Fields, they would trade that #1 overall pick. They could move back just a couple spots and take Marvin Harrison Jr. and still grab a boatload of capital and kind of restock their picks for the later rounds, which seems smart for the most part. What complicated the entire situation is the fact that Justin Fields improved on his numbers, but still did not look the part on the football field. If you're Ryan Poles, I think it's a lot harder to leave your career in the hands of a quarterback that is still a wild card. Of course, rookies are always wild cards, but at least you have 4 years to develop him in a much better, and I mean a much better situation to start his career, whoever it would be. With all those things considered, after a very long 3 months of going back and forth on this, Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus made their decision. And can't say I'm too surprised about it. They took calls from multiple teams. They have multiple offers. We don't know what all those offers were, but we do know that Justin Fields had a preference, and that preference was the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so, since Ryan Poles promised to do right by him, that's exactly what he was going to do, and he made that trade happen. Ryan Poles and company decided to go after their guy. Like I said before, the offensive staff is good enough for any quarterback, but especially a rookie who you can be patient with and develop over a 4-year span. Here is where I personally think the Bears failed Justin Fields. It's not the fact that they decided to move on from him. That's just part of the business, you know. That's them doing their due diligence. They have a quarterback that they handpicked to make the face of the franchise, and they're rolling with that. That's not doing wrong. That's not doing Justin Fields dirty. Where the Bears did him dirty was not Ryan Poles' fault. It was Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace. If the McCaskies knew that this team was more than likely to be rebuilt from the ground up, there would be no reason to even trade up and grab a quarterback in the first place. Why waste your time with a top talent like Fields? Trading up to 11 to grab Fields was simply a stunt by Nagy and Pace to save their jobs for 1 extra year. Development at the quarterback position was never a priority in Fields' time as a starter or a backup. It was always about the team around him. It was always about restructuring the roster. It was always about who's the smarter play caller, Nagy or Bill Lazor or even Andrew Giannocco. The answer was 0 of them, 0 of the 3, and none of them had any clue what to do with Justin Fields' talents, and that is exactly how they ended up at the exit. I've said this before a million times, and I might say it a million more times. Had Justin Fields been drafted to just about any other team, he would be in a much better and well-suited position than he is right now. I really do believe that. But what made Justin Fields so special, though, and what made him so important in his time in Chicago was not just his dedication to improve every year. It was his utmost professionalism that he brought to the table every single week. No matter how bad the team got, no matter how dark it got in Hallis Hall, or how bad the politics were surrounding all this mess, Justin Fields never complained once. He remained humble through the rocky off seasons. He gained every ounce of respect from his peers and from his teammates and players around the league. He always gave back to the city while never expecting anything in return. And one of the things he provided us with, not just to the city, but to the fans as well, is this sense of hope that they had not had in such a long time. Like, I don't think you guys could fully comprehend just how much he means to Chicago. Every single week, Justin Fields found a way to do something that just I'm not sure how to explain it. There were times I just said, like, how does he do that? How can any human being do the things that this guy does on a weekly basis. He really is an amazing athlete, and I'll never understand how the Chicago Bears were never able to truly tap into his potential. And for anyone to say that he doesn't have that high of a ceiling anymore, I just don't think you've been watching. And I know he still has his struggles currently, but please keep in mind, the guy's only 24 years old. Like, do people really think that this guy has that low of a ceiling? I can't see it that way. I really can't. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, is a really ideal spot for him. Hopefully over time, Mike Tomlin can bring him back to that superstar flashy potential that he'd been showing us for the past 2 seasons, but also while working out the basics and just getting the fundamentals down so that he can solidify himself as a true starter in this league, because I really do think that he can get there. Do I think the Bears made the right move? Yes. Caleb Williams is the guy. And after these next couple seasons roll out, I think a lot of Bears fans will be very forgiving and they'll move on pretty quick. But to say that I'll miss Justin Fields would be a complete understatement. Fields will be back. You got my word on that. But for now, it's time to focus on the draft. Caleb Williams, I think he's a lock for number 1. Who's number 9? I don't know. Let's make a mock draft next time. See you there.